So here are my spoiler-filled thoughts on Dune, and just, wow. I've said this before, but just, my one-word summation of the film is just, wow. Everything from a visual and audio standpoint, from a filmmaking, from a technical perspective, this film is flawless. Denis Villeneuve, just, God, I loved this movie so much as a fan of the novel, just seeing it brought to life on the big screen through Denis Villeneuve's eyes. His passion for it oozes through. Everybody is so perfectly casted, and just a lot of the issues I have with the films is either them leaving specific things out of the book that I personally loved and would have kept if I was adapting it, or just from an overall pacing point of view. I think I'm not too sure, because I mean, this is no Blade Runner 2049. The film is 2 hours and 35 minutes long. It doesn't feel like that. It moves at a clip, and I don't know if that's a negative or not, because whilst some elements of the film are allowed to breathe and you feel it, the beginning I think is a little choppy, but I don't think it's clunky. It's more just, it moves at such a clip that you want some more breathing time and a proper introduction to our characters, if that makes sense. I say that because I think one of my minor gripes is our introduction to Paul Atreides, in the sense of that he seems very down and less wide-eyed as he is in the book, and I think that is for the worst, in the sense because aside from those, like, first 30 minutes, as soon as they get to Arrakis, you do see wide-eyed Paul Atreides come through, and I feel like we needed a little bit more of that. In many ways, it is the same problem I have with book Paul Atreides, where he is moody and broody and sad. He's a sad boy, which is funny because at the beginning of the novel, he is like that, but he's not that entirely. Like, in the training scene with Gurney in the book, he's much more happy and wide-eyed and excited, whereas in the film, he's just, I'm so sad. Life is so hard, Paul Atreides, It's not that I think Chalamet is miscast on the role at all. No, he is excellent in this movie. It's just at the beginning, the way we are presented to Paul, he is just one sad boy. But I mean, Timothée Chalamet just shined in this movie, especially when the plot starts to get going. Like, the bits in the middle where him and Jessica are in the desert after they've escaped the attack on Arrakis, and he's in the still tent, and he gets his prescient visions, and he is freaking the fuck out, which is a thing that I loved in the book, where he's a lot more scared, but in this film he is not just scared, he is petrified, he is sweating, he is like dribbling. In many ways he reminded me of Frodo Baggins in like Two Towers and Return of the King, where he is just possessed by the ring and is just in a trance. The way Timothée Chalamet plays that scene is just so grand and Shakespearean. Like, it's very tragic, it's very much a Shakespearean tragedy. The way he plays it reminded me a lot of Michael Fassbender as Macbeth, actually, when he's just like, I see in my eyes the horrors coming before me, terrible purpose. I was like, oh shit, this is like one of the best bits in the book, and Timothy is nailing it. Oh my god, he made the scene even better. Just, oh shit. The way they present Paul's arc in this movie is just beautiful, where by the end of the film, he has become accepted part of the Fremen tribe, but he knows he is destined for terrible purpose. And it's just so well played by Chalamet. He kills Jamis, and you see the change, you feel the change. Hans Zimmer's score, Paul's theme, you know, the okay, okida. The way it's incorporated into the score, and it's more somber and darker, but also majestic, because he is about to become Paul Atreides, Paul Muad'Dib, the dictator. Just, oh, it is so good, and just, I loved it. The cast is really great. Oscar Isaac is great as Duke Leto. Rebecca Ferguson just fucking kills it as Lady Jessica. And the thing that I find interesting about Denis' interpretation is that Jessica is very strong, but she lets herself express her emotions. When she is terrified, she's fucking terrified. She is crying, but at the same time, she has the Bene Gesserit training. She knows fear is the mind killer, and so she has to calm herself down, and she repeats the litany against fear over and over again, and it is beautiful, and just, it's so good. Oh, one little nitpick. Timothée Chalamet, Paul Atreides doesn't say the litany against fear like he does in the trailers, which is, I don't know, disappointing. Like, I really love the way Timothée Chalamet delivered bits of it in the trailer, and I don't know, during scenes like the Gom Jabbar scene, which is a really good scene, but in many ways, that scene itself is interesting. I'll come back to that, but just when in that Gom Jabbar scene, I thought he was going to start saying the litany, but he doesn't, and I don't know, I wish he did say it. But yes, Rebecca Ferguson as Lady Jessica is just fucking perfect, and I loved her so much in this. She is a strong, well-developed character, and she is just gorgeous as hell. And then obviously we have side characters like Duncan Idaho, played by Jason Momoa, who is just really great. I like the portrayal of him being Paul Atreides' sort of older brother. You know, he keeps going, oh, I'm a boy. You feel the brotherly, tender connection between the two of them. And in many ways, I love the way they foreshadow and tease Duncan's death, because Paul goes, I had a vision about you dying, and I feel like if I was there, I would have prevented it. But just, I mean, as a book reader, I knew Paul was there when Duncan dies, but just seeing it play out in the film is tragic, and it is heartbreaking, and it's just, there's that little layer of knowing Duncan is going to die, and it's just, you're waiting for it to happen, and it's shocking, but it's so well done. And then, of course, there's Josh Brolin as Gurney Halleck, and he is just great. But in many ways, they stripped away Gurney's playfulness, and they gave it to Duncan Idaho, which I think is fine, and I don't mind that change, because obviously Duncan dies in this movie, and we need to care about Duncan when we get to Dune Messiah. So, by stripping away elements of Gurney and making him a bit more serious and grim and darker, I'm not against it, so long as he maybe gets a bit more playful than the second one. But even if he doesn't change in that way, I'm fine with it. Just so long as we get the bit where Paul and him reunite and it's all like, ah, you young pup, you young pup. And the overall supporting cast is great. Zendaya is really good as Chani, but again, like she said in interviews, she's not in the film that much. And she really isn't, but she is really good at what she's given. Javier Bardem as Stilgar is just wonderful. I mean, having Javier Bardem in your film is always a win. Why didn't you tell us you were a weirding woman? I love his voice so much. Just got it. Sharon Duncan Brewster is really great as Leah Kynes, and honestly, the gender bending of Leah Kynes doesn't affect the film at all. So if that's one of your complaints, just get over it. She pretty much just plays Leah Kynes as Leah Kynes. Chan Cheng is really good as Dr. Yue, but they strip away a lot of Yue's parts. They cut out the subplot of everyone thinking there's a traitor amongst the Atreides, so he doesn't really get a lot to do. He's just meant to be that unassuming doctor medical character that just, you know, examines Paul and goes, oh, he's really strong and healthy. And it's a change that I'm indifferent towards. Like, it doesn't make the film any worse, but it makes it different to the book and the David Lynch film, where we know Yue is the traitor from the beginning. So it gets rid of that dynamic slightly, but I don't think it's a bad thing. It's just, it's interesting, and I don't hate it, but it is a difference. And getting onto the Harkonnen side of things, Stellan Skarsgård is just fantastic as the Baron Harkonnen. David Dastmalchian, I really mess up on his name. I'm sorry that I've butchered your name, but David Dastmalchian as Paita de Vries is really good, and Dave Bautista is also really good as the Beast Raban. But, and this was a concern of mine coming into the movie, the Harkonnens aren't really in the movie that much. And that is a criticism I will lob against the film. There isn't enough time spent with the Harkonnens, because although they establish that the Harkonnens are evil, from the score, from the set design, to the way everybody acts and moves, they are disgusting, especially the Baron, just, there wasn't enough of them, if that makes sense. They make me go, oh shit, fuck. These guys are scary. Like, when they're on screen, they have a presence and they are scary, but they are not terrifying. You don't dread them coming on screen. You just go, yep, these are the bad guys. And that, I think, is probably my biggest criticism of the film, is the way it juggles some of the characters, where some of them who are somewhat important or need presence established don't get that time, and others maybe get too much time. Or maybe it's just a case of there's too many characters for them to juggle around with, so they decide to just shorten other character screen time. I don't know, and in many ways, choosing to get rid of certain elements for certain characters, I think, is fine. Specifically if you're going to build upon new characters. Like I said, how they stripped away bits of Gurney and gave it to Duncan Idaho, because, I mean, we need to care for Duncan because, spoilers for the Dune saga. Moving on to Dune Messiah and Children of Dune, where Duncan appears once again. You are meant to care about Duncan. But aside from those few gripes, I really love the way Denis Villeneuve just told this film's story. Just, it is just so visual, but also subtle. It's definitely his most mainstream film, if that makes sense, because Denis Villeneuve is very visual but artsy, independent director. And this is a lot more accessible than, say, something like a Blade Runner 2049. And the way he brings to life some of the iconic moments in the book is really interesting. The way he does the Gom Jabbar scene, he does it really well. But I won't lie and say it's my favourite version of the scene, because obviously the book scene is iconic. It's the first chapter, it is exciting and engaging, and it introduces us to the world, it gives us all these names and mysteries, and it intrigues us. But in this, it's about like 20, 25 minutes, 30 minutes into the film. And it's well done. I'm not saying it isn't, but it's just, the way it's presented in that teaser trailer is really well done. And I think I prefer the David Lynch version of the scene. I'm not too sure, just there's something about the way Denis does this scene where he focuses more on Jessica than he does on Paul in this specific scene. It's interesting to me because, I mean, Paul doesn't have a massive reaction like he does in the trailer. He's like, ah! It's more just, he channels that pain and you see a darkness in him, which is really interesting. And in many ways, you can dissect the scene and go, oh, yeah, this is showing Paul Atreides' darker turn. It's there from the beginning. But also, just, it gets rid of that, childlike nature to Paul Atreides that is at the start of the novel. But then the other scenes that Denis Villeneuve brings to life is just really well done. The Spiced Harvester sequence is so cool. The Sardaukar attack in Arrakis is great. Duncan Idaho's last stand is awesome. The fight between Paul and Jameis is just so good. And easily my favorite scene of the film is Paul's vision of the future in the still tent where he freaks the fuck out and just... You see the darker turn, it's there in the score. Anyone who says this film is a white savior story just wasn't paying attention to the film. I'm sorry, I hate that excuse, but honestly, the film seeds Paul Atreides is not a heroic character. But I mean, that shot of Paul and Chani in the carryall, that vision of the future where the Fedaykin are all cheering Atreides, and you see that shot of Paul and Chani, Paul is not heroic in that shot. He looks scary and demented, and just... Paul Atreides is not a good person. Spoilers, but yeah, that's what happens to Paul Atreides. Paul Atreides is not Luke Skywalker, he is Anakin Skywalker. Also, speaking of Star Wars, I love the sequence where they're leaving Caladan, and it's sort of like Denis Villeneuve does this little montage paying homage to Star Wars, like Paul goes to the beach, puts his hand on the water, and then looks at the sunset, and I'm like, oh, that's a nice parallel to Binary Sunset. In a lot of ways, it was Denis Villeneuve giving the audience a little tip of the cap going, yep, Star Wars was heavily influenced by Dune, so I'm going to take a little shot from Star Wars that we all know and love, the Binary Sunset, and give that to Paul Atreides. That sequence is Paul Atreides' Binary Sunset, and I quite like it. An interesting tidbit in this film is that they don't actually call Paul Muad'Dib yet, which is interesting because they seed it, we see the Desert Mouse, but the end of the film with Paul and Jessica being led by the Fremen to Sietch Tabor is interesting because that's where the film just ends. We don't get things like Paul becoming Muad'Dib, which I thought was going to happen in this film. The way it ends is interesting. And at the same time, I can understand why critics were like, oh, the ending is so abrupt, like, what the hell? This should have been a bit more of a cohesive, complete ending. And I do get that complaint, but in many ways, it just made me go, give me part 2 now, because I need to see this end. I need to see the trilogy. I need to see part 2. I need to see Messiah. Just what Denis Villeneuve and company have created is just so stunning. Like I said before, this is the Fellowship of the Ring for my generation. The way it ends, I went, this is one long story and it needs to be completed. And honestly, I need this trilogy to be completed. It is just... I loved this movie, and if we can get 2 more of these films, fuck yes. I am all in. People, I'm serious. Go watch this movie in the biggest cinema you can, with the loudest speakers, the biggest screen, the highest resolution, because I mean, just, it is an experience and you don't want to miss it. But also, watch it on HBO Max if you have HBO Max, because, like, this movie needs to do really well, not just in box office wise, but on HBO Max as well. So, go to the cinema, but as you go to the cinema, have it playing in the background at home, then come back, watch it again on HBO Max, and then the next day go to the cinema again so we can get Dune Part 2, because I mean, just, I need the trilogy, I love this movie. If we can get more of this, yes. Yes. But anyways, that is my thoughts on Dune Part 1. Wow. Let me know what you guys thought in the comments down below. Like, subscribe, follow me on social media and all that good stuff. And until we meet again, I'll see you guys next time.